Hey guys, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Databank. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco, the Fantasy Football X Factor, here to bring you matchups for this week. Very excited to talk a little bit about some of the 1 p.m. games I already discussed earlier in the week. Already posted it on YouTube and also on Apple Podcasts. You can go check that out with the TCK Pod, the Candlestick Kids. You can also find it on my YouTube channel at Fantasy Football X Factor. So I talk about the early games in detail. On this, we're going to do some catch-up, talk about some of the notable injuries that are going to impact this week. We're also going to talk a lot about the matchups for the 4 p.m., the Sunday night, and the Monday night games as well. So just as a reminder, guys, I also have been putting together a lot of analysis over the last couple of weeks. I have a slot versus wide receivers, tight end information. I also have success rate modeling that factors in for Football Outsiders. If you're interested in these kind of stats, feel free to go on Instagram, DM me. Thinking about trying to sell some of this stuff because it's great information, maybe like 99 cents to $1. So let me know what you think about that. But let's start getting into the game. So obviously I talked about the 1 p.m. games already. So I'm just going to go over them really quickly again. The first game I'm going to talk about is the Texans versus the Titans. And this is a low pass volume projection game. Both these teams don't see a lot of volume in the defensive side of the football. But like I touched on in the podcast, who beats the Titans? And it's slot receivers, and it's also tight ends. Now, that doesn't bode well for guys like Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks as they play predominantly on the outside. But like I've touched on previously, the corners for the Titans are their veterans, Malcolm Butler, Jonathan Joseph. But at this stage in their careers, they are not fast, not quick. They're going to have a hard time keeping up with Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. And also, Cooks had a pretty nice role last week in the slot. So I really like Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller in this matchup. I think they can really shake loose. Now, for Watson, he hasn't been great versus the Tennessee Titans the last couple times they faced. 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception is about kind of where his stat line is. So I think he's still usable for fantasy. But at the same time, I would definitely look at, I'm okay with it. I think you could play him in this matchup. I think that should be fine if you have him on your roster. And then also David Johnson. So the Tennessee run defense has been average. It's okay. It's been keeping teams to a certain level. But we've seen big games from guys like James Robinson and Dalvin Cook. I mean, Dalvin Cook went for 181 yards. James Robinson went over 100. So David Johnson also had his best game running the football last week, getting over 90 yards. So I'm into David Johnson. I'm also into Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller in this matchup, along with Deshaun Watson's a borderline QB1. On the other side of the football, there is an injury to the defensive tackle for the Titans, which should help David Johnson. But key returns is Adam Humphries. So Corey Davis looks to be out again because of COVID, but it looks like Adam Humphries is going to be back. So I think Humphries is actually a very intriguing option in this matchup because we have seen the Houston Texans more susceptible to slot receivers in slot production. So Adam Humphries is on the PPR radar in this game, especially with Corey Davis out. I also like Jonnu Smith. We saw Eric Ebron and Travis Kelce over 50 yards and a score versus the Houston Texans. So I think Jonnu is still a start. I also like Adam Humphries in PPR, and of course A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown feasted on Houston last year. He is going to see shadow coverage from Bradley Roby, which is going to hurt him a little bit, but he got over 100 yards and a touchdown last year in both matchups versus this team. So wrong with A.J. Brown. I might just fade him in DFS because of Bradley Roby, but he's still a season-long start. Ravens versus the Eagles. This is a great pass game projection for both sides. We've seen both defenses see a lot of pass volume. Also, the Eagles are 9.5-point underdogs in this game, so you're thinking they're going to have to throw a lot. We thought this last week with the Cincinnati Bengals, but Burrow, they just got him out of there. I mean, they ran Joe Mixon so much in the fourth quarter just to get out of that game, so I think it's very important to harp on that again. I think that was a fluke. I think the Eagles are going to have to throw a lot in this one. That's why I really like Zach Ertz. I think Zach Ertz can be in your DFS lineup this week. I think he's going to bounce back in a big way. The last 2 weeks, he's faced the 49ers, and he's also faced the Pittsburgh Steelers. And those two defenses are very tough against tight ends. The Ravens are not so much. So I think Ertz bounces back. And also, when it comes to the Eagles side, it's Miles Sanders. You're going to start him, obviously. Carson Wentz, I think, is off the fantasy radar because of the injuries to the offensive line. They're going to be down 4 starters with Lane Johnson out. So I'm not really looking at Carson Wentz. I think if you're in any DFS that plays defenses, you got to get the Ravens DST in there, play them. Even with their defensive tackle, Brandon Williams, now out, I still believe with all the injuries up front, that Ravens DST is worth paying up for because they're going to have a nice week this week in this matchup. And then also for the Eagles is Travis Fulgham. We have seen teams beat the Ravens on the outside versus the inside more because, Marlon Humphrey's their best corner. He plays the slot. He's going to pretty much shut down Greg Ward. So I think Travis Fulgham is probably the number 2 pass catcher. He's like a DFS dart throw. And also after his big week, you might be able to start him as a wide receiver 3 because the Eagles are going to be playing catch up and throwing a lot in this game. So I like Ertz, I like Miles Sanders, and I also like Travis Fulgham in this matchup. For the Ravens, it's going to be a product of my favorite stack of the week is actually Mark Andrews at tight end and the Ravens DST. I think Mark Andrews is going to have a monster game. We have seen plenty of big-time tight ends have monster performances against this Eagles team, including that big game from George Kittle. I think there's a good get-right spot for Mark Andrews in the sense of receptions and yards. I think he gets it all this week. I think he's a must-start player in DFS. And also because Marquise Brown is going to see a lot of Darius Slay. So Slay, last week everyone's going to talk about Chase Claypool, and Chase Claypool went off. But Slay did not shadow Chase Claypool. When Deontay Johnson went down, it kind of changed the strategy for the Philadelphia Eagles secondary. But when we have seen Slay track number 1s, then it's been a pretty solid. He's shut down Terry McLaurin, and he also shut down A.J. Green. A.J. Green, of course, this season has not been great, but he was getting like 13 and 9 targets, and then he went down to 6 because of Slay's impact. So I don't love Hollywood Brown in this game. I actually do think Mark Andrews is benefiting the most from that. So I'm starting Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson, and also I'm starting the Ravens DST. And for the running backs, I just don't you're banking on a touchdown. All these guys are heavily involved in this game. So it's a 3-man committee, and I think Mark Ingram's not going anywhere. Anybody that tells you Dobbins is going to take over, I think what they're trying to do is keep Mark Ingram healthy and fresh. I think what you're going to start seeing down the stretch is Mark Ingram starts getting more work, especially when they get closer to the postseason and once it gets to the playoffs, because they want to keep the old man fresh because he has been their best consistent runner. He's been running very well. He only gets 8, 9, 10 carries, and if he doesn't get in the end zone, he's not being used in the pass game because that's Dobbins' role. So I'm staying away from these running backs in this game until one gets hurt or we start seeing signs that one is going to consistently get 12 to 15 carries a week. Next matchup, Falcons-Vikings. This is a good pass game volume for the Vikings side. Atlanta sees a lot of pass volume. I also think because the Vikings are going to be able to throw against the Falcons are going to be able to throw against the Vikings. It should be a fun with Julio's coming back. Julio, Calvin Ridley, keep firing them up. I think if you're going to pick between Russell Gage and Hayden Hurst, I would lean more Hayden Hurst. But at the same time, I'm not excited. Outside of Mo Alley Cox, there hasn't been much tight end production versus the Vikings this season. And I think that it's going to be a Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley game. I think Todd Gurley as well could have a very nice performance because Minnesota has not been that good at shutting down the run. So my starts, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Todd Gurley. And I think you can start Matt Ryan now that Julio is playing in this matchup. On the other side, obviously Adam Thielen. I think Kirk Cousins is in play. We did see him face a team last week in Seattle that had the most dropbacks versus any quarterback, but the Vikings did take a lead in that one, so maybe Kirk Cousins can have another solid performance, but he never throws enough in volume to be a monster weekly performance. So it's going to be Alexander Mattison on the ground. Obviously, I think he's not as much involved in the passing game, so I know everyone's going to play him in DFS. I know, I call it a gut feeling, but he's a starting season long. I think if you're going to play in a tournament style in DFS, fade Alexander Mattison because if he goes off, everybody's going to have him. So if the only way to win in a tournament is fade guys that are going to be over high-owned players and play that variance and hope that he just has a nice day, not a big game. So I'm still starting Alexander Mattison season long. I'm also really interested in Irv Smith. I think Justin Jefferson, obviously you can play him. The Atlanta Falcons secondary has been more conducive for outside wide receivers versus slot guys. But Justin Jefferson plays about 50-50. I think Adam Thielen smash play, you play him. Justin Jefferson is kind of a wide receiver 3-size flex. He does play a decent amount in the slot, and actually the Falcons have been decent against slot receivers this season. And where they really have been bad is tight ends. And Irv Smith last week started to get it going. 4 catches. He looked pretty good. He ran a lot of routes. So I think Irv Smith could be that the DFS dart throw of the week at tight end. And I think if you're in a pinch, if you're one of the owners of Darren Waller, Hunter Henry, and you're looking for a bye week replacement, I think Irv Smith can be that guy. So that's pretty much it for that game. So the Browns and the Steelers, I think this game is a quiet shootout. I think the NFC North in the past has been smash mouth football, but now you're facing 2 defenses that are very good at stopping the run and very bad at stopping the pass. The Pittsburgh Steelers have not been good against receivers. They've been terrible. So this is a great game for Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, because what the Steelers are good at doing is stopping the run, and they're also good at stopping tight ends. So Austin Hooper could have a very small sample size, and I think it's going to go right to Jarvis Landry, and I think it's going to go to Odell. So I think I'm playing both those guys in this matchup. I also like Baker Mayfield with Pittsburgh favored in this game at home. I think that Baker's going to have to throw more. When we see Baker throw a little bit more, he does start to flirt with top 15. Last week he had his first top 15 week of the season, so I think that he can once again be a borderline QB1, especially with some guys like Russell Wilson who are not active this week. Now, Kareem Hunt, you got to start him. Volume dependent, doesn't matter. We just saw Miles Sanders get in the end zone twice last week, just because you're able to move the football against Pittsburgh because you could throw against them. So I think he's a good bet for a touchdown. Plus, he's getting 20-plus carries. Don't even think twice about it. So I think really the starts for the Browns, I think I'm firing up pretty much Odell, Landry, Baker Mayfield, if you're the Russell Wilson owner and a streamer, I like it. And then also Kareem Hunt, I'm fine with it. On the Pittsburgh side, listen, the great thing is with Deontay Johnson officially out, it's actually very good news for Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, Eric Ebron. I think you can start centralizing the targets. With Deontay Johnson in there, it's going to be 4 guys vying for that pie. I think now it's basically 3. And I think that means you can start these guys. Chase Claypool. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is interesting. So Kevin Johnson, the slot corner for the Browns, had a very good game last week against Zach Pascal. But this is going to be his first matchup versus Juju and a very good slot corner. And plus, the Browns have been getting completely destroyed in the slot all year. So I think Juju is a must-start. I think you even play him in DFS. I think a lot of people will be on Chase Claypool, and I think Juju might be the play. But I like the season-long, I'm in on those guys, both Chase Claypool and Juju. And Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron last week had 5 receptions, 40 yards. He did fumble one of them. He did have a bad drop on another. But at the same time, the Browns are terrible at covering tight ends. So I think you're rolling with Eric Ebron because no Deontay Johnson to really help boost his pass volume in this game. And then finally on Big Ben, I'm starting Big Ben, and I'm also starting James Conner. Listen, you don't sit Belkhouse. I don't care how bad the matchups is. So you're playing them. And also, another thing about Eric Ebron that I just want to add is the Browns are down 2 safeties. So that's great news for Eric Ebron, and it's also great for the deep passing game. That's why I'm on Chase Claypool as well. So rolling with the Pittsburgh Steelers at home against the Browns across the board. So for this game, I think it's pretty much status quo. Fire up, everybody. Bengals Colts. Now, I just talked about what happened last week. The Bengals were down big. They did not throw. They got out of there. You're hoping that this week, because they're playing another tough defense against the Indianapolis Colts, they're 7.5-point underdogs in this game. I think this is a problem. So last week, they could not protect Joe Burrow, and rightfully so. They just ran out the clock. They were down 27-3, and they just ran out the clock because they were tired of seeing Joe Burrow get beat up. And I understand completely, but that could be a continued problem, especially against a good Indianapolis defense. But I think in this matchup, we're going to go back to the well. More often than not, you're going to get, when you're big, heavy road underdogs like the Bengals are, you're going to get pass volume. I think T. Higgins is a better play than Tyler Boyd because more outside receivers have been beating up on the Colts than inside. So I think Higgins and Boyd are both in play once again. I think A.J. Green is kind of taking a backseat, even though he did hurt his hamstring last week and he seems disgruntled. But I think Higgins, Boyd in. And I think also because the ground game is going to struggle against the Indianapolis Colts. So I'm really liking from the Bengals side just those 2 guys, and that is it. Now, when you're looking at the other side of the football, before I finish, Darius Leonard is out. That is true. So Darius Leonard is good news for Joe Mixon, but we just saw Kareem Hunt go for 20 carries and 72 yards. So And the Browns have a much better run offense than the Bengals. So Joe Mixon to me is like a flex wide RB3. I'm not too high on him, even with the injury to Darius Leonard. Now, for the Colts offense, there is a lot of good news. I think one of my starts of the week at running back is Jonathan Taylor. Sam Hubbard, DJ Reader are both gone. They're injured on the defensive line. So that's big news for Jonathan Taylor, who's also getting their left tackle back, Anthony Costanzo. So I think you're rolling with Jonathan Taylor in this game in a big matchup. Now, also at the receiving corps, Mo Alie-Cox is out. That is notable. I think Trey Burton is right there with Irv Smith as those borderline tight end one streamers this week. Because with no Mo Alie-Cox, that's going to open up 3, maybe even 4 targets for the tight end position that can go to Burton now. And I think Burton, to me, that's a great opportunity. The Bengals are not great against tight ends, so I think you could start Trey Burton or Irv Smith are my 1-2 punch when it comes to streaming tight end this week. And then T.Y. Hilton. We have seen consistently outside of speed receivers like Odell Beckham Jr. and DJ Chark beat up on this Bengals secondary. And we just finally saw last week what happens when the Colts finally had pass volume. They were in a football game where they had to throw more, and they finally were able to, get T.Y. Hilton going, 10 targets, 6 receptions. I think T.Y. Hilton is once again is a wide receiver 3, borderline wide receiver 2 in this match. So I'm starting T.Y. Hilton. I like Trey Burton as a flex, and I love Jonathan Taylor. And that's pretty much it. I'm not excited to start anybody else in this game. Naheem Hines, unfortunately, the Phillip Rivers and this offense is not supporting him like Austin Eckler in previous years as the second running back option. So just those guys, Taylor, Hilton, and Trey Burton. Next game is going to be the Lions and the Jaguars. So Desmond Trufant is still out for the Lions, and Joe Dahl, the guard, is coming back. So that's good news for the run game. Now, when we talk about who beats the Jaguars, ground games beat them, Joe Mixon, David Johnson. So Adrian Peterson, to me, is, listen, coming out of the bye, you would think they would get their young guys involved, like Swift and all those guys. But my thought process is, I think AP eats in this game. I think he gets you a touchdown. I think he's a startable asset. I think unfortunately, I have Adrian Peterson in one of my leagues, and I have Gaskins and James Robinson and Zeke, so I'm not able to get him in there. But I like Adrian Peterson in this matchup because of the success that guys like Joe Mixon and David Johnson have had versus this Jaguars running defense. They're also a very good matchup for slot receivers. Now, listen, Kenny G is the sweetener. I love Kenny G. Like, I really do. I really do. And excuse my French, but I love him. I think you start him every week. He's back. He's great. Even with C.J. Henderson coming back, love Kenny G. He's a must start. And then one of the worst defenses against the tight end is the Jaguars. So I think T.J. Hockenson is a start. So it's T.J. Hockenson, Adrian Peterson, Kenny Golladay, and also you could probably start Matthew Stafford. But just keep in mind, these two defenses see very low pass volume. They're both losing teams. But hopefully, since it's only a 3-point spread, there's a little bit more volume in this game, and we can see a little more fireworks like we saw with the Jags last week with Deshaun Watson. So I do like this game. I think both guys can play. Both Matthew Stafford and Gardner Minshew are in play in this game. On the other side, to spin off Gardner Minshew, Tyler Eifert might be out of this game, and also DJ Chark is questionable. So if both those guys play, I think you're only going to start DJ Chark. And I also do like Keelan Cole over Laviska Shenault. Now, Shenault is the hotness. He had 7 catches, but Keelan Cole is consistently getting you production, and then he gets in the end zone. He's gotten 3 touchdowns this season. So Cole, to me, is someone to continue to monitor, especially even if Chark is out. The Lions have been bad against slot receivers, so I do like that matchup for Keelan Cole over Laviska Shenault if DJ Chark plays. If Chark is out, I'm in on Shenault, and I think you could play Cole as well. So I'm in on both those guys in this matchup. And if Tyler Eifert is out, that just opens up some more targets. Maybe James O'Shaughnessy could be a flex. A low-end tight end one. But like I said, Irv Smith, Trey Burton, I'd much rather have in this game. So next matchup is the Bears versus the Panthers. Now, this is a good pass volume projection game. Both defenses see a lot of volume, so that's good for the pass catchers. Now, the Panthers run. Let's start with the Bears first. They lost their guard, James Daniels, but that gets canceled out because K'Wan Short is out for the Panthers. So the Bears lost a guard. The Panthers lost a defensive tackle. I think you're rolling with David Montgomery. David Montgomery is the smash play of the week. The Carolina Panthers have been getting crushed. We just saw Todd Gurley just go ham against them. So I really like David Montgomery. I also really like Allen Robinson. We have seen the stud receivers really beat up on the Carolina secondary. So Mike Evans, Keenan Allen did very well. So I'm really high on Allen Robinson, and I'm really high on David Montgomery in this game. This is a tougher matchup for tight ends, so I'm not really too high on Jimmy Graham. I think it's just sticking with those two guys, Allen Robinson and David Montgomery in this game for the Bears side. And on the Panthers side, I think I'm sticking with the RB position. Mike Davis, to me, is always been good. He's a great play. This matchup has been pretty tough. So the Bears are very tough against outside wide receivers. They have shut down guys like Darius Slayton, etc. So I do believe that if you're going to play anybody, Robbie Anderson plays a decent amount in the slot. So I like Robbie Anderson. He also gets a decent amount of target percentage when he's in the slot. So I think I'm picking Mike Davis as my number one from the Panthers. Number two is Robbie Anderson, and I'm fading DJ Moore once again. So I think it's much easier to beat the Bears in the slot. So I think that favors Robbie Anderson in this game. And it's also a good game for tight ends. But like I said in my podcast previously, Ian Thomas is not worth it. Pivot to Irv Smith, Trey Burton. I think that just opens up opportunities for Mike Davis in this game. All right, so the Washington football team and the Giants, I'm not going to go through this really. There isn't many injury updates, so just go back, listen to the podcast from earlier this week. I talk about the Washington football team and the Giants, but high level, just to let you know, the guys I like, who beats the Giants? Slot receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, James Bradberry will be on Terry McLaurin. I think that makes Terry McLaurin just a wide receiver 3/flex. I'm not high on Terry McLaurin because James Bradberry is playing at a very good level, shutting down number ones, and that's going to cause some problems. So I think that opens up opportunities for pass-catching running backs. Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissic are going to be on the PPR radar. I like Antonio Gibson in this game in general. I think he gets you a couple of receptions along with some production on the ground against the Giants defense. Now, on the other side, for the Giants, who beats the Washington football team? Outside receivers. Robert Woods, Marquise Hollywood-Brown, Hopkins have all had pretty good games against this football team. So I think I'm leaning Darius Slayton in this matchup. I think he could do just what those guys did in this game. And also tight ends. I think Dallas Goedert, Mark Andrews, Gerald Everett all had great games against this defense. So I think you're rolling with Evan Ingram and Darius Slayton in this game. And then on the ground, Freeman, I think he's finally separated himself. He's the clear number one. He's up to speed. I think the problem is, though, the offensive line for the Giants versus this defensive line for the Redskins is a mismatch. So I don't think Freeman's going to have a monster day on the ground. He's going to have to get you some production through the air. I think he's nothing more than just an RB3 flex play this week. I'm not too high on Freeman unless he gets you a score, which is a coin flip. Okay. So now on to the the later games. So, the Broncos and the Patriots we didn't cover in the podcast, so I will cover them in more detail now. So for the Broncos game, Broncos are 8-point underdogs on the road. I think let's keep this very simple. The Patriots defense isn't the same Patriots defense of old, but how you beat them is basically with slot receivers. They've been more susceptible to slot guys. So Tyler Lockett, Hunter Renfrow, Tyreek Hill got most of his production from the slot. So I really like Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is getting well over 80% of his snaps in the slot. So I think Jerry Jeudy is going to have a solid day. He's a wide receiver 3. Also with Tim Patrick, probably going to see a lot of Stephon Gilmore. I think you're going to see a lot more targets funneled in, plus no Noah Fant. So also, it's important to note that Melvin Gordon is out. Phillip Lindsay's going to get a play. I think if you have Phillip Lindsay, sure, you can throw him in. He's not a great play. The Patriots have been very good against running backs this season, so I would prefer to pivot elsewhere, but I think Phillip Lindsay is startable because he's going to get that bell cow role. On the Patriots side, great news, Cam is back, but Sony Michel and Shaq Mason just recently got put on the COVID list, so that's a little bit of a ding on the Patriots' run offense and their pass pro because Shaq Mason's pretty good. I think Cam Newton's obviously going to play is a good play, but the one thing I will tell you about the Broncos is they've been susceptible to outside receivers, but, guys like Corey Davis, Deontay Johnson, and Jeff freaking Smith from the Jets had some solid days. So, I think you're starting Julian Edelman. That's fine. Harris is the running back is also in play because they're big favorites at home. We just saw what he did against Kansas City 2 weeks ago. So I think Damian Harris is on the starter radar along with Cam Newton and Julian Edelman. I think the sleeper of this game is Amari Bird. Bird played with Cam Newton back in Carolina. He's running the most routes on the team. They seem to like him. And we have seen, like I just talked about, Corey Davis, Deontay Johnson, Jeff Smith on the outside beat this Denver Broncos. A.J. Boye is not expected back this week, so I think if you're really desperate at wide receiver and you need a wide receiver 3 dart throw, I think the Bird from the Patriots could be in play. All right, so Jets-Dolphins. The Jets are 9.5-point underdogs in this game, so that's good news for a guy like Jameson. I think it's very simple. You're rolling with Jamison Crowder. I don't think I'm going to get cute and worry about all these other guys. Brashard Perriman should be back this week. I think Perriman is worth stashing on your benches. The Jets' schedule is not great for outside receivers moving forward, but at the same time, I think you could probably I put Perriman on my bench in leagues that I could just to stash him because there is literally nobody behind Jamison Crowder. I mean, Jeff Smith is getting double-digit targets, so worth stashing. Also, Adam Gase is just released Le'Veon Bell, and he's not using Chris Herndon. He's not running any routes, so he favors his wide receivers. So Perriman is probably in play. He's a bench stash. I'm not going to play him this week against Xavier Howard and Byron Jones on the outside. So I think outside of Crowder, that's it. Now, this is a good matchup for running backs. Frank Gore should be able to do something. You can see Frank Gore getting you 15 carries for 60 yards. And if he gets in the end zone, great. But I'm sorry, man. I'm hoping LaMichael Pirine finally gets his chance. I hope LaMichael Pirine is someone. If LaMichael Pirine's available, stash him on your bench. He's worth a stash for now to see how this goes with Le'Veon Bell gone. Now, for the other side, the Dolphins, I think, who beats the Jets? The studs. DeAndre Hopkins, 6 for 131. Stephon Diggs and John Brown on the outside beat them up. Tim Patrick went for 6 for 113 and 1. Kendrick Bourne had over 60 yards. So I really like Devontae Parker in this game. I think last week Preston Williams got it done, which is good news for his fantasy outlook. And we've seen the couple of guys. So we've seen Christian Kirk, 5 for 78, and John Brown do very well as the number 2 outside receiver. So I think Preston Williams is in play this week as a wide receiver 3, but I think you're really starting Parker. Now, also the good news for Preston Williams is the Jets have oddly been really good against tight ends. So I think, Mike Gesicki is like I might favor Preston Williams over Mike Gesicki in this matchup. And as for Myles Gaskin, I mean, listen, he got it done against San Francisco. And the Jets have allowed a rushing touchdown or a touchdown to a running back in every single game this year. That includes Zach Moss in the receiving game. So I think you're really going to roll with, I think Gaskin's a must start. He's basically a bell cow. At home, heavy favorites. That's great for him. He could probably get you a lot of carries as well in this matchup. This is probably my game of the week I'm very excited about. Packers versus the Bucs. I think the best way to sum this up is try to start everybody in this game. It's a 1-point spread. The Packers are rolling. The Buccaneers are rolling. The good thing about the Packers' run defense, they're getting Kenny Clark back. And then the Buccaneers, they just lost Vita Vea. So that's good news for a guy like Aaron Jones. But when you're looking at the matchup, this is very good. You're going to start Devontae Adams even in a tough matchup versus the outside corners of the Buccaneers. But I think this game is just a pass volume. This is going to be high-scoring football. That's why I want all the guys I can get. So Robert Tonyan, I think you can start him. Tampa Bay has mixed results versus tight end, so I think Tonyan could be a start, along with Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams. I'm not going to worry about Marcus Valdes-Scantling. It's just I think when Adams is a target hog. So when Adams is on the field, he's just going to get you 12 targets easily. So I think you're rolling with it's going to take away from guys like the ancillary guys. So I think I'm just sticking with Adams. I think Tonyan is a fringe tight end one this week, but I think because of the volume of this game, you start him and also Aaron Jones. Now, obviously, Rodgers, Brady, fire him up. Now, the biggest thing for this, the Green Bay Packers do have Jair Alexander, and he's good. but he's giving up 7 inches to Mike Evans. Mike Evans is going to dominate Jair Alexander. Trust me. Now you have this long layoff between the Thursday night game and this game. The Bucs are finally healthy. Chris Godwin, Justin Watson, Mike Evans, Scotty Miller, all healthy. No injury designations. They are in. I love it. Tom Brady, let's do it. Tom Brady DFS, do it. I love it. Tom Brady is ready. I think anybody who says, like, oh, you need to hit if the Bucs lose 34-31 versus the Packers, if you say hit the panic button, you're out of your mind. Like, they haven't had healthy receivers all year. Like, stop it. Like, they have been, like, Brady's been throwing to undrafted rookies again because they're all four of their starting wide receivers were hurt. Insanity. And he lost O.J. Howard. Stop it. Like, Brady's going to do awesome this week. I can't wait. Anyway, Ronald Jones, play him. I think, even with Kenny Clark coming back, I think that he's going to have scoring upside in this game. But I think that Brady just eats Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Scotty Miller, to me, is where you kind of have to draw the line a little bit. I did look to see, if the Packers allowed secondary wide receivers to really flourish. And there isn't a lot of cases. They did allow some production to the other receiver for the Falcons. But, Scotty Miller is the only one I'm kind of like, I think he's okay. I think he's a fringe wide receiver 3 in this awesome game. But I love Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and Tom Brady and Ronald Jones and those guys. So, start. Rams 49ers, the Sunday night game. The 49ers are 3-point underdogs at home. Listen, this could be a solid pass game volume. The 49ers, so let's talk about the Rams first. The 49ers have not been tested all year. They finally had played a decent offense in the Dolphins, which is crazy to say, and they got boat raced by them. Preston Williams had a touchdown, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki had a big game, Fitzpatrick did awesome. Before that, they didn't face anybody. But the problem is not the 49ers are a bad team. They're just so hurt. They lost Richard Sherman, K'Wan Williams. They have lost Witherspoon on the outside. They lost 3 corners. Their starting corners are all out. Then their defensive line is extremely banged up. So I think the Rams are going to be able to run the football against them. The problem is, which game are you going to play? Russian Cam Akers looked the best. D'Angelo Henderson got the carry count, the touchdowns, the receiving work, and Brown's still a thing. I think it's a headache. I don't know who to choose. So, unfortunately, until that clears up, these guys are bench stashes for me. I think Henderson's a trap because he scored 2 touchdowns last week, but he only had, 60 combined yards and all those touches. So, interesting to say the least, but maybe Cam Akers starts getting some of that back. From the receiving core, we did see, of course, Preston Williams and Devontae Parker do very well. So, I think Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are in play in this game, especially because the 49ers, the one thing they still do very well is stop tight ends. The one thing they're not banged up is safety, linebacker. They're still healthy there. So I think that's where you could stop the Rams. I think Higbee and Everett are kind of off the fantasy radar. I think Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are in play. And I think because they can establish run, I'm not really too high on Jared Goff. Now, for the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo looked terrible in his return. But like I touched on last week, just give him time. He's got Deebo Samuel. He's got Ayuk, George Kittle. Now, the Rams are very, very good against wide receivers, so I'm not worried about the receivers. I'm not playing them. George Kittle, great. Smash. Always a start. I think you even play him in DFS because he's going to have he had 2 big games last year against the Rams. I think you can start him. I think Raheem Mostert is a great play this week. The Rams have allowed rushing production. They got Devonta Freeman going, which is crazy for the Giants. So I think you could start Raheem Mostert in this game. So I think it's Mostert and Kittle on the 49ers side. All right, bumping over to Monday night, Chiefs-Bills. Very exciting pass volume game. Chiefs are always awesome. The Bills are not the same defense, so you got to love the Chiefs. Chiefs just lost Sammy Watkins, Kelechi Osemele, so that's a little interesting for them. But with Sammy Watkins out, I think Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know Clyde. I know everyone's worried. Le'Veon Bell's there. I get it. And that's unfortunate. Bell's a stud. Bell's going to be awesome for this team. I think Clyde is going to be – the good news about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's going to be the clock killer. So when the Chiefs are up big – so the Chiefs have faced their toughest opponents so far. It's been the Baltimore Ravens, and they faced the Patriots. Those games are done. Now they're going to play – they're going to have the rest of their season – when they're up big, it's going to be Clyde. So I think Clyde's going to be fine, but I think Lev Bell's going to be the passing game back. Also, Clyde has really struggled on the goal line, so I think Lev Bell could take that role too, which is bad news. But for this week, you're rolling with them. As for Mecole Hardman, you could beat the Bills in the slot a lot more than you beat them out wide. But remember, Levi Wallace, Tre'Davious White is banged up with a back injury, so you could probably beat the Bills all day. So I think you're rolling with Mecole Hardman over a guy like Demarcus Robinson. So I think Hardman's on the wide receiver 3 map. I go along with all the other guys, Tyreek Hill, blah, 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 yada, yada. On the other side, the great thing is they're going to be playing catch-up. Bill's going to have to throw. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, John Brown. Like, I am excited to play all these guys. The Chiefs are very, very good against wide receivers, but it doesn't matter when you have all this pass volume. When the offenses are clicking, like if the Chiefs are running the score, it's going to force them to throw. We've seen the Bills when they have to throw. Stephon Diggs is going to get it done. John Brown on the outside with his speed will get it done. I think I'm playing both those guys. Staying away from Cole Beasley. Always a nice PPR play, I guess, but I like John Brown in this one. I want explosive playmakers. I think Singletary's in play. Even with Zach Moss coming back, I think you're going to see him catch a couple passes. I think he's a good play, especially in leagues that reward you for catching balls. Finally, the Cardinals and Cowboys. Now, the big thing for the Cardinals is they just lost Chandler Jones, which is probably their best defensive lineman, best pass rusher, which is great news for Andy Dalton in his first game in this matchup. So when you're looking at, let's just focus on the Cardinals first and how you beat the Cowboys. Outside wide receivers, tight ends, ground game. So when you're looking at who has beat them in the past, I think D-Hop, great news. I think Christian Kirk is in play because we saw the Seahawks with Lockett and Metcalf. We saw the Browns with Jarvis Landry and Odell. And the Falcons have multiple pass catchers beat the Cowboys. And I think both teams are going to be able to score in this game. So I do like the fact, I do think Christian Kirk is in play as a wide receiver 3. I love DeAndre Hopkins. I think Hopkins, you should try to get him in your DFS lineups. I know Kenyon Drake has been rough, but you got to keep rolling with him. At some point, the fact that you hear that Cliff Kingsbury wants to get him more, wants to figure it out, means that they're trying. And the only thing is Chase Edmonds has been great in the pass game. It's unfortunate that Drake is not getting more work in the pass game, but it is what it is. But I'm still playing Drake, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, and Christian Kirk in this game. On the Cowboys side, listen, Andy Dalton is the best backup in football. He has been a Pro Bowler. He went to taking teams to the playoffs. Now he has Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and then Schultz is playing well. Dalton Schultz. I mean, believe it or not, I would never have thought that the Cowboys would support 4 pass catchers. Then you got Zeke in this game versus the Cardinals. And I think really this is going to be a fun one to watch too. Listen, Dalton's going to feed his best players. He did it with A.J. Green. He did it with Tyler Boyd. So last season, he did favor the slot because of Tyler Boyd. In years prior, he just feeded A.J. Green. So when you're looking at this matchup, who beats the Cardinals is very important. So slot receivers and tight ends have been better versus the Arizona Cardinals because Patrick Peterson and Byron Murphy have been great on the outside, and I think those guys are going to be able to keep up with Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper. So I think CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz are the starts in this game. I like them a lot. And the great thing about the Cowboys is they did lose 2 offensive line, which is bad. Joe Looney and Tyron Smith are both out. That's bad. But at the same time, they still have 3 very good offensive linemen. And then at the same time, they're going to have to play with the fast-paced Arizona offense. So I think Dalton is still good. I think Dalton is a start. I think I would play him even in tougher matchups because we've seen the Cowboys' defense is so bad that Dalton's going to have to throw. And he has 4 very capable pass catchers. And, of course, Zeke is Zeke. So I think I might be fading Amari Cooper and Gallup, favoring CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. And, of course, Zeke should eat. And I think Dalton is a QB1 this week with all these weapons in a game where the Cardinals should be able to score a lot in this matchup. So that wraps up this week's Databank for Week 6. Once again, Bobby Lamarco at the Fantasy Football X Factor. You can follow me on Instagram at Fantasy Football X Factor, Twitter at FFX Factor. Go read my articles on football.rasball.com, the Shadow Coverage Report, and then expandtheboxscore.com, where I talk about the opportunities analysis. Of course, subscribe here, and we'll talk more. And guys, I like I said, I started putting together a bunch of spreadsheets for fantasy football. I think I want to start exploring giving them out slot versus wide receiver production versus defenses. So every week you'll know how many guys score points against slot versus wide, for tight ends, inline versus slot, running back success rate modeling to show the best running game matchups. I got it all. So if you're interested, DM me, message me here, go on the Instagram and message me there. Once again, Bob with the Market, guys. Thanks for joining me. Have a great weekend.